The courtroom was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. My husband Raymond sat across from me with that smug smile I'd grown to hate over the past 37 years of marriage. His lawyer, some sharp-dressed woman from downtown, kept whispering in his ear, and he'd chuckle like they were sharing inside jokes at a cocktail party instead of sitting in divorce court trying to take everything I had. Judge Morrison, a stern black woman with silver-streaked locks pulled back in a bun, adjusted her glasses as she looked down at the papers before her. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife through butter, "you seem quite confident about the terms of your prenuptial agreement." Raymond leaned back in his chair, straightening his silk tie. "Yes, Your Honor, it's all very clear. My wife gets to keep her teacher's pension, and I retain all marital assets, including the property at 1247 Riverside Road that she inherited from her father." That's when my lawyer, Ms. Patricia Green, stood up. She was a sister from my church who'd watched this whole mess unfold, and she had a look in her eyes that made my heart race. "Your Honor, if I may present some additional documentation regarding that property and Mrs. Caldwell's inheritance?" Raymond's smile flickered for just a second. Just 1 second. But I saw it. Judge Morrison nodded. "Proceed." Patricia pulled out a manila folder so thick it could have been a phone book. "Your Honor, we've discovered that Mr. Caldwell has been deliberately concealing crucial information about the true value of the assets in question. The land at 1247 Riverside Road isn't just empty property as represented in the prenup. According to geological surveys conducted 6 months before Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell married," Raymond's lawyer shot up. "Objection. This is—" "Sit down, counselor," Judge Morrison said firmly. "I want to hear this." Patricia continued, her voice steady and strong. "The land sits on a natural gas deposit valued at $32 million. Furthermore, Mrs. Caldwell's late father, Ernest Robinson, established a $5 million trust fund for his daughter, accessible in the event of divorce or widowhood. Mr. Caldwell has known about both of these assets and deliberately structured the prenup to—" The rest of her words were drowned out by Raymond's lawyer objecting, Raymond himself jumping to his feet, and the judge banging her gavel. But what I remember most clearly was the look on Raymond's face. Pure, unadulterated shock. Like someone had just told him his lottery ticket was actually worthless. Judge Morrison's voice boomed across the courtroom. "We'll take a 30-minute recess while I review these documents. Mr. Caldwell, I suggest you and your attorney use this time wisely." Before we continue, please drop a comment if you've ever experienced something like this. We'd love to hear your story, and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. Let me take you back to where this all started, because you need to understand something about me. My name is Dorothy Caldwell, though I was born Dorothy Jean Robinson 72 years ago in a small house on the south side of town. My father, Ernest Robinson, was a mechanic who worked with his hands his whole life. He fixed cars, repaired anything that broke, and saved every penny he could to make sure I got an education. I was the first person in my family to go to college. Got my teaching degree from the State University in 1975, came back home, and started teaching English at Lincoln High School. That's where I spent the next 40 years of my life, teaching kids to love reading, to express themselves, to dream bigger than their circumstances. I met Raymond Caldwell at a community fundraiser in 1987. I was 44 years old, had never been married, and honestly, I'd made my peace with it. But Raymond was different. Or so I thought. He was an investment banker, sophisticated, well-dressed, and when he smiled at me across that crowded room at the Cultural Center, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. He pursued me like I was the only woman in the world, sent flowers to my classroom, took me to nice restaurants downtown where we were sometimes the only black couple, and he didn't care. Told me I was beautiful, intelligent, that he admired my dedication to teaching. After 6 months, he proposed. Now, I need to be honest with you. There were signs from the beginning. Little things. The way he'd correct my grammar even though I had a degree in English. How he'd suggest I dress more professionally when I wore my comfortable teaching clothes on weekends. the subtle way he'd mentioned that his colleagues' wives didn't work, as if that was something I should aspire to. But I was 45 years old and in love for the first time in my life. So I ignored those little red flags. I told myself he was just trying to help me be my best self. My daddy had passed away 2 years before I met Raymond. Heart attack at 68 right there in his garage while working on Mrs. Henderson's Buick. It broke my heart into a million pieces, but Daddy left me with 2 things: his house, which I sold to buy my own little place, and that land out on Riverside Road. The land had been in our family for generations. Daddy's grandfather bought it after World War I, back when black folks were still finding ways to own property despite everything working against them. It was just 10 acres of scrubby brush and pine trees, nothing special to look at. Daddy always said he'd build something on it one day, but he never did. He just held on to it, paid the taxes every year, and told me, "Baby girl, this land is your inheritance, your great-granddaddy's legacy. Don't ever let nobody take it from you." When Raymond and I got engaged, he insisted on a prenup. "It's just good business, Dorothy," he said, holding my hand across the table at that fancy steakhouse downtown. "I have assets to protect, and you have your teacher's pension. This way, everything stays clean." I didn't like it, but his lawyer explained it all in simple terms. If we divorced, I'd keep my pension. He'd keep his investment accounts and his money, and any property we owned together would be split based on who brought it into the marriage. The land on Riverside Road was listed as undeveloped property, value approximately $15,000 based on county assessment. That number seemed low to me even then, but what did I know about property values? I was a high school English teacher, not a real estate expert. Raymond's lawyer assured me it was accurate, and Raymond kissed my forehead and said, "Don't worry about all this legal stuff, sweetheart. You just focus on being my beautiful wife." So I signed. The first few years of marriage were good. Raymond worked long hours at his firm downtown, and I continued teaching. We bought a beautiful house in Hampton Estates, one of the nicest black neighborhoods in the city. We went to church every Sunday at New Hope Baptist, where I sang in the choir and Raymond served on the finance committee. We hosted Thanksgiving dinner, attended family reunions, and from the outside, we looked like the perfect couple. But slowly, so slowly I barely noticed it happening, things changed. Raymond started making comments about my job. "Still dealing with those kids?" he'd say when I came home exhausted. "When are you going to retire and let me take care of you?" "I love teaching," I'd remind him. "These kids need me." He'd sigh, like I was being difficult. "Dorothy, you're married to a successful man now. You don't have to work. My colleagues' wives are involved in charity work, country clubs, real pursuits, not babysitting teenagers who don't appreciate you." That word, babysitting, like 40 years of shaping young minds, was nothing more than watching children. Then there were the comments about my father. Raymond never said anything directly critical when Daddy was alive, but after we married, little remarks started slipping out. "Your father's humble origins," he'd say at dinner parties. "Dorothy comes from simple folk, but she's risen above all that." Risen above, like my daddy, who taught me the value of hard work and integrity, was something to be ashamed of. The breaking point came 3 months ago, on a Tuesday evening in July. I'd come home early from a summer school session, and Raymond was in his home office with the door cracked open. I was about to call out to him when I heard him on the phone. No, she has no idea," he was saying, and something in his tone made me freeze in the hallway. "The prenup is airtight. When I divorce her, she gets nothing but her little teacher's pension." My blood ran cold. "Yes, I know I've been married to her for 37 years, Raymond continued, and I could hear the ice clinking in his whiskey glass. "But the long game paid off. That land she inherited is finally going to be worth the wait. The natural gas company confirmed the deposit size last month. $32 million, Marcus. $32 million. And it's all mine." I grabbed the wall to steady myself. "How did I pull it off?" Raymond laughed, actually laughed. "Easy. I had my lawyer lowball the property value in the prenup, listed it at $15,000 when I knew damn well what was under that ground. Her father didn't know either, the poor simple man. Just held onto that land thinking it was some kind of family legacy. Tears burned my eyes, but I stayed silent, listening. The mortgage on our house? I used her land as collateral without her knowing, forged her signature on the paperwork. She trusted me completely. Stupid woman never asked questions, just kept teaching her little classes and singing in that choir. The contempt in his voice was like acid. Best investment I ever made was marrying Dorothy Robinson. Spent 37 years playing the devoted husband, and now I'm about to cash out. The prenup states clearly that any property she brought into the marriage remains separate. But what she doesn't know is that I've been paying the property taxes from our joint account for years. My lawyer says that gives me a legitimate claim to at least half the value. Add in the collateral situation, and I own that land outright. He paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. Divorce her? Next month. I've already got the papers drawn up. She'll cry, she'll be devastated, but in the end, she'll sign. She always does what she's told. And then I'm done playing house with a schoolteacher. I don't remember walking to our bedroom. I don't remember packing a bag. But I must have, because the next thing I clearly recall is sitting in my car in the church parking lot at 9 p.m., calling my friend Loretta and sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. Loretta Washington had been my best friend since college. She and her husband Thomas lived 2 streets over, and she'd been suspicious of Raymond from day one. Something about that man don't sit right with me, she'd said years ago. I defended him then. I wasn't defending him now. Dorothy, baby, where are you? Loretta's voice was full of concern. New Hope parking lot, I managed to say between sobs. Loretta, I heard him. I heard everything. Stay right there. I'm coming to get you. 15 minutes later, Loretta pulled up in her Lexus. She got in my car, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug while I cried on her shoulder. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. Every word Raymond had said, every cruel detail of his plan, every year of manipulation I'd been too blind to see. When I finished, Loretta was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Dorothy Jean Robinson Caldwell, you listen to me. Your daddy didn't raise no fool, and he didn't raise no victim. That man in your house is about to learn who he married. But the prenup? Forget the prenup, Loretta said firmly. My niece Patricia is a divorce lawyer, one of the best in the state. We're calling her first thing tomorrow morning, and we're going to bury Raymond Caldwell so deep he'll need a map to find daylight. I don't have money for a lawyer like that, I said. My savings? Patricia goes to our church, Loretta interrupted. She'll help. And baby, if your sorry excuse for a husband has been planning this for 37 years, then we've got time to plan right back. That night, I stayed at Loretta's house. Didn't call Raymond, didn't text, didn't do anything but sit in her guest room and try to process the fact that my entire marriage had been a lie. The man I'd loved, the man I'd trusted with everything, had married me for a piece of land he planned to steal. The next morning, Loretta drove me to Patricia Green's office downtown. Patricia was a sharp sister in her early 40s, with natural hair styled in a perfect twist-out, and an air of quiet confidence that made me feel safe the moment I walked in. Mrs. Caldwell, she said, shaking my hand. Aunt Loretta told me everything. I'm going to be straight with you. What your husband did is not just unethical, it's illegal. But the prenup was obtained through fraud, Patricia said firmly. If he deliberately misrepresented the value of your assets and forged your signature on mortgage documents, that prenup isn't worth the paper it's printed on. But I need to do some investigating first. I need you to not tip him off that you know anything. How am I supposed to go home and act normal? I asked. Can you stay with Aunt Loretta for a few days? Tell him you need space because of a family matter, something vague. I nodded. I can do that. Good. Give me 1 week. 1 week to dig into your father's estate, the property records, and your husband's financial dealings. Don't sign anything, don't agree to anything, and for God's sake, don't let him know you're onto him." I texted Raymond that I was staying with Loretta to help her with a family emergency. He responded, "Okay, don't rush back." That was it. No, "Are you okay?" No, "Do you need anything?" Just permission to stay away, like I was an inconvenient houseguest. That week was the longest of my life. I went through the motions at summer school, teaching my remedial English class while my mind spun in circles. At night, I lay awake in Loretta's guest room, replaying every moment of my marriage, seeing the manipulation I'd missed. The dinner parties where Raymond would interrupt me to correct something I'd said. The way he'd make decisions about our finances without consulting me. How he'd dismissed my concerns as emotional thinking whenever I questioned anything. The subtle isolation from my own family, always making excuses why we couldn't attend Robinson family reunions. On day 6, Patricia called. "Mrs. Caldwell, can you come to my office today?" Something in her voice made my heart race. "Is it bad?" "No," Patricia said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "It's very, very good. But we need to talk in person." An hour later, I sat across from Patricia in her office. She had files spread across her desk, and her eyes were practically glowing. "Dorothy, can I call you Dorothy?" I nodded. "Dorothy, your father was a very smart man. Did you know that 3 months before he died, he had the land surveyed?" "No," I said, confused. "Why would he do that?" "Because someone approached him about buying it. A natural gas company. They'd done preliminary assessments and found what they thought might be a deposit. They offered your father $50,000 for the land." "He never told me." "He didn't sell," Patricia continued. "According to the correspondence I found in the county records office, your father wrote back and said, 'This land is for my daughter. If it's worth $50,000 to you, it's worth more than that to her.' He kept the survey results and all the correspondence in a safety deposit box at First National Bank." Tears filled my eyes. "I didn't know about a safety deposit box." "The bank contacted you when your father died, but—" "Raymond handled all the estate paperwork," I whispered. "He said he'd take care of everything so I could grieve." Patricia nodded grimly. "I thought so. Raymond Caldwell knew exactly what that land was worth when he married you. The geological survey was part of the public record. He or someone working for him found it, did additional research, and determined that your worthless inheritance was actually sitting on one of the largest natural gas deposits in the region." My hands were shaking. "He married me for land." "He married you for $32 million, Patricia said. "But here's the beautiful part, Dorothy. Your father didn't just leave you land. He left you a trust fund." I stared at her. "What?" "Ernest Robinson set up a trust 3 months before he died. $5 million, accumulated through careful investments and life insurance policies he'd taken out decades ago. The trust was designed to be inaccessible except under specific circumstances. If you divorced, if you became widowed, or if you reached age 75. $5 million? I could barely whisper it. $5 million. Your father's will specified that the trust's existence should not be disclosed unless and until those circumstances arose. He wanted to make sure that if you ever needed it, it would be there, free and clear." I started crying then, really crying. My daddy, who'd worked in the garage his whole life, who'd worn the same 3 pairs of work pants for years, who'd never taken a vacation that wasn't visiting family. My daddy had secretly built me a fortune and protected it. Patricia handed me tissues and waited until I could breathe again. "There's more," she said gently. "I pulled all the mortgage documents on your house. Raymond did forge your signature on the papers using your land as collateral. That's fraud. I also found that he's been systematically moving marital assets into offshore accounts for the past 5 years, which shows premeditation and intent to defraud you in divorce proceedings." "What does all this mean?" Patricia smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone about to serve justice on a silver platter. It means that when we go to court, we're not just going to void the prenup. We're going to make sure you get every single thing that's rightfully yours, plus half of everything he tried to hide. And he's going to pay your legal fees. When do we go to court? 2 weeks, Patricia said. Raymond's lawyer filed divorce papers this morning. He's moving faster than I expected, which means he doesn't know we're on to him. He thinks he's going to walk in, wave the prenup around, and walk out with your inheritance. I felt something shifting inside me. The grief and shock were hardening into something else, something stronger. Patricia, I said slowly, I want him to think he's winning right up until the moment he loses everything. She grinned. I was hoping you'd say that. The next 2 weeks were the best performance of my life. I moved back home and played the devastated wife. When Raymond handed me the divorce papers with a sympathetic expression that made me want to throw up, I cried on cue. When he patted my hand and said, I'll make sure you're taken care of, Dorothy. You'll be fine. I nodded tearfully. At church, I let the congregation comfort me. Sister Beverly from the choir brought me casseroles. Deacon Morris told me he'd pray for reconciliation, and I smiled sadly and said, some things aren't meant to be. All the while, Patricia was building our case. She got court orders for Raymond's financial records. She deposed the banker who'd processed the mortgage fraud. She brought in a geological expert to testify about the natural gas deposit. She pulled 37 years of our joint tax returns. Raymond had no idea what was coming. The night before court, Loretta came over with wine and Chinese takeout. We sat in my kitchen, soon to be just my kitchen, and she raised her glass. To your daddy, she said, who loved you enough to protect you even from beyond the grave. To Daddy, I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. And to Raymond Caldwell, Loretta added with a wicked grin, who's about to learn that you don't mess with a black woman who's got God, a good lawyer, and the truth on her side. We drank to that. The next morning I put on my best Sunday dress, royal blue with gold buttons, the one Daddy always said made me look like royalty. I did my hair, put on my pearls, and looked at myself in the mirror. This is for you, Daddy, I whispered, for every sacrifice you made, for every lesson you taught me, for protecting me even when I didn't know I needed protecting. The courtroom was exactly as I described at the beginning. Raymond in his expensive suit, looking smug. His lawyer looking confident. And then Patricia standing up with that folder, and Judge Morrison listening with growing interest. During the recess, Raymond's lawyer tried to negotiate. She cornered Patricia in the hallway and said they'd be willing to give me $100,000 to walk away quietly. Patricia laughed in her face. Tell your client we'll see him back in court in 20 minutes. When we reconvened, Judge Morrison looked at Raymond like he was something unpleasant stuck to her shoe. Mr. Caldwell, she said, her voice cold enough to freeze water. I've reviewed the documents submitted by Mrs. Caldwell's attorney. The evidence of fraud is overwhelming. The prenuptial agreement you're relying on is hereby voided due to deliberate misrepresentation and fraudulent concealment. Raymond's face went pale. Furthermore, the judge continued, the court finds that you deliberately defrauded your wife by forging her signature on mortgage documents and systematically hiding marital assets in preparation for divorce. Mrs. Caldwell is awarded full ownership of the property located at 1247 Riverside Road, including all mineral rights and natural gas deposits. She is also awarded the full amount of the trust fund established by Ernest Robinson. Additionally, you are ordered to pay Mrs. Caldwell half of all marital assets accumulated during your marriage, including those you attempted to conceal in offshore accounts. She wasn't done. You are also ordered to pay Mrs. Caldwell's legal fees in their entirety and to cover all costs associated with transferring property titles and accessing the trust fund. Do you understand these terms, Mr. Caldwell? Raymond looked like he might be sick. Your Honor, Do you understand these terms? The judge repeated, her voice sharp. Yes, Your Honor, he whispered. Then this court is adjourned. The gavel came down, and just like that, My 37-year marriage was over. Outside the courthouse, Raymond tried to approach me. Patricia stepped between us immediately, but I held up my hand. "Let him talk," I said. Raymond looked older somehow, deflated. "Dorothy, we can work this out. We don't have to." 37 years, I said quietly. 37 years you lied to me. 37 years you used me. You married me for my land, Raymond. For money, not for love, not for companionship. For $32 million you thought you could steal. It wasn't like that. Don't, I said, my voice stronger now. Don't you dare lie to me one more time. I heard you on the phone, Raymond. I heard every word. The stupid woman who always does what she's told. The simple man who was my father. The best investment you ever made. He had nothing to say to that. My father worked his whole life in a garage, I continued. He fixed cars and saved every penny to send me to college. He bought land to leave me something, to give me a legacy. And even when someone tried to cheat him, even when a gas company offered him what they thought was good money, he said no. Because it was for me. Because he loved me. Tears were running down my face now, but I didn't care. You looked down on him, called his life humble like it was shameful. But my daddy was worth 10 of you, Raymond Caldwell. He was honest. He was kind. He protected his daughter even from the grave. And you? You're just a thief in an expensive suit. I turned to leave, then looked back one more time. Oh, and Raymond? You're going to need to find somewhere else to live. That house in Hampton Estates? It's mine now, too. You've got 30 days to get out. The look on his face was worth every tear I'd cried over the past 3 months. Patricia drove me back to Loretta's house, where what felt like half of New Hope Baptist Church was waiting with food, hugs, and celebration. Sister Beverly had brought a cake. Deacon Morris led a prayer of thanksgiving. And Loretta, my dear friend who'd been there through everything, pulled me aside and whispered, "Your daddy would be so proud." That night, alone in what was now truly my house, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and looked at the documents Patricia had given me. The deed to the land, now solely in my name. The trust fund paperwork, with my father's signature at the bottom. And a letter, sealed and dated 3 days before he died, that Patricia had found in the safety deposit box. My hands shook as I opened it. "My dearest Dorothy Jean," it began in Daddy's careful handwriting. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and something has happened that made you need this money. I don't know what that something is, but I know my baby girl, and I know you wouldn't touch this trust unless you truly needed it. I've worked hard all my life, and what I built for you. Not because I don't think you can take care of yourself. Lord knows you're the strongest woman I know, but because even strong people need a safety net sometimes. That land on Riverside Road is worth more than you might think. I had it checked out, and there's something valuable underneath. I don't fully understand all the technical talk, but I understand this. It's yours. Don't let nobody take what's yours, baby girl. Not family, not friends, and especially not some smooth-talking man who thinks he's smarter than you. You're a Robinson. We don't quit. We don't give up. And we don't let people push us around. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Your daddy," I cried until there were no tears left. But these were different tears. These were tears of love, of grief, of gratitude, and of something else. Something that felt like freedom. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Caldwell, this is Terrence Johnson from Apex Natural Gas Corporation. We've been trying to reach you about the property on Riverside Road. We'd like to discuss a very generous offer for the mineral rights. Please call me at your earliest convenience." I smiled and deleted the text. That land wasn't going anywhere. It was my father's legacy, and now it was mine. But as I sat there in my quiet kitchen, thinking about the future and everything that had just happened, my phone rang again. This time it was Patricia. "Dorothy, we have a problem," she said, and the urgency in her voice made my stomach drop. Raymond's lawyer just filed an emergency motion. They're claiming that—" The call cut off abruptly. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. Then the doorbell rang. At 10:30 p.m. And it wouldn't stop ringing. I stood frozen in my kitchen, phone in one hand, the other gripping the counter. The doorbell kept ringing, long, insistent bursts that echoed through the house. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Who's there?" I called out, moving toward the front door but stopping in the hallway. Daddy's voice echoed in my memory. "Don't open the door at night unless you know who's on the other side." "Mrs. Caldwell, it's Officer Marcus Webb from the police department. We got a 911 call from this address about a domestic disturbance." My blood ran cold. "I didn't call 911. Ma'am, I still need you to open the door so I can verify you're safe." I looked through the peephole and saw a black officer in uniform, badge clearly visible. Behind him stood Raymond. My stomach dropped. This was a setup. I called Patricia back immediately. She answered on the first ring. "Dorothy, are you okay? The call dropped." "The police are at my door," I said, keeping my voice low. "Raymond's with them. They're saying someone called 911 about a domestic disturbance." "Don't open that door," Patricia said sharply. "I'm calling my contact at the precinct right now. Stay on the line with me." I heard her making another call, her voice authoritative as she spoke to someone. Meanwhile, Officer Webb knocked again, more gently this time. "Mrs. Caldwell, I understand this is frightening, but I have a legal obligation to make sure you're safe when we get a 911 call." "Officer Webb," I called through the door. "My attorney is on the phone right now. She's contacting your precinct. I did not call 911, and I am safe and alone in my home." I heard Raymond's voice, muffled but unmistakable. "Officer, my wife is very emotional. She's not been herself lately. I'm worried she might hurt herself." The audacity of this man. Patricia came back on the line. "Okay, Lieutenant Foster is calling Officer Webb right now. The 911 call came from Raymond's cell phone. He claimed you were threatening suicide and he was worried about you." "That lying snake," I hissed. "Dorothy, listen to me carefully. This is a harassment tactic. He's trying to make you look unstable. Do not engage with him. Let the officer verify you're safe, but do not let Raymond in your house." Officer Webb's phone rang. He stepped away to answer it, and I watched through the peephole as his expression changed from concerned to irritated. He ended the call and turned to Raymond. "Mr. Caldwell, you need to leave this property now." "But officer, my wife—" "Is not your wife anymore as of today, according to the courthouse records my lieutenant just pulled up, and she's clearly fine. You made a false 911 call, which is a crime. You need to leave now or I'll have to arrest you for criminal trespass and misuse of emergency services." I watched Raymond's face turn red. "This is my house." "No, sir. According to the divorce decree filed this afternoon, this house belongs to Mrs. Dorothy Caldwell. You have 30 days to remove your belongings, but you cannot be here at—" He checked his watch. "10:45 at night without her permission." Raymond looked at the door, and I knew he could feel me watching. "Dorothy," he called out, "we need to talk." "Mr. Caldwell, leave now." Officer Webb's hand moved to his belt. I watched Raymond storm off to his Mercedes and peel out of the driveway. Only then did I open the door. Officer Webb gave me an apologetic smile. "Ma'am, I'm sorry about that. Are you all right?" "I'm fine, officer. Thank you for handling that." "Lieutenant Foster briefed me on your situation. We'll keep an extra patrol on this street tonight. If Mr. Caldwell comes back, you call 911 for real. Understand?" After he left, I sank onto my couch, hands shaking. Patricia was still on the phone. "That man is desperate," she said. "Which brings me to what I was calling about. His emergency motion claims that the trust fund your father left you was actually marital property because he helped you maintain your relationship with your father during your marriage, and therefore he contributed to you receiving the inheritance." I laughed, but it came out bitter. "He helped me maintain my relationship with my father?" "Patricia, Raymond barely tolerated Daddy, made excuses not to visit him, called him simple, acted like spending time with my family was beneath him. I know, and we're going to prove it. But this motion means we have to go back to court next week. He's not going down without a fight. After we hung up, I couldn't sleep. I sat in Daddy's old recliner, the one piece of furniture I'd kept from his house, and thought about everything. At 72 years old, I should have been enjoying retirement, maybe traveling, spending time with friends. Instead, I was fighting a war with a man I'd loved for nearly 4 decades. The next morning, Sunday, I went to church. I needed my community, needed to feel the spirit, needed to remember who I was beyond this mess with Raymond. New Hope Baptist was packed as always. I slipped into my usual pew, and Sister Beverly immediately slid in next to me and grabbed my hand. "How you holding up, baby?" "I'm here," I said. That's about all I can say. Pastor Williams, a silver-haired man in his 60s who'd married Raymond and me all those years ago, preached on David and Goliath. "Sometimes," he said, his voice booming through the sanctuary, "God will let you face a giant, not to destroy you, but to show you, and everyone watching, exactly who you are." David didn't need Saul's armor. He didn't need conventional weapons. He needed faith, and he needed to remember who God made him to be. I felt those words settle into my bones. After service, Pastor Williams pulled me aside in his office. "Sister Dorothy, I heard what happened in court. I need to tell you something." I sat down, suddenly nervous. "Raymond came to see me 6 months ago," Pastor Williams said heavily. "Wanted to know about the process for divorce in the church. I counseled him, prayed with him, asked about marriage counseling. He said you two had grown apart, that you were too focused on your teaching, that you didn't understand his world." "He was planning this for months," I whispered. "I'm ashamed to say I believed him," Pastor Williams continued. "He's a good actor, Sister Dorothy. Had me thinking you were the one who'd checked out of the marriage. But yesterday, Sister Beverly told me what really happened. About the land, about the fraud, about everything." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "That man sat in my office and lied to a man of God, used this church as part of his scheme. I want you to know that New Hope Baptist stands with you. Whatever you need, witnesses to testify about his character, financial support for legal fees, a place to stay if you feel unsafe, we're here." Tears filled my eyes. "Thank you, Pastor." "One more thing," he said, pulling out a folder. "I went through our church records. Every time your father donated to New Hope, every volunteer hour he logged, every church event he attended. I'm making copies for your lawyer. If Raymond wants to claim he helped you maintain your relationship with your father, we have 30 years of documentation showing that Ernest Robinson was active in this church right up until he died, and Raymond barely showed up for Sunday service." That afternoon, I met Patricia at her office. She spread out photographs on her desk, pictures from church directories, newspaper clippings, community event photos. "This is what we're building," she said. "A timeline of your father's life and your relationship with him. Every Sunday dinner, every holiday, every time Ernest Robinson showed up for you and your husband didn't." She pointed to a photo from a church barbecue in 2005. There was Daddy at the grill, apron on, laughing with Deacon Morris. I was beside him, holding a platter. Raymond was nowhere in the photo. "Where was your husband that day?" Patricia asked. "Golf tournament with his colleagues," I remembered. "He said it was important for networking." "He chose golf over your father's 70th birthday celebration," Patricia said, making a note. "We've got dozens of instances like this." Over the next week, my house became war room headquarters. Loretta came over every evening with dinner and moral support. Patricia brought boxes of documents. Sister Beverly organized a rotation of church members to stay with me at night after the 911 incident. We found photos, cards, letters, all evidence of my relationship with Daddy that had nothing to do with Raymond. My father's friends from the garage came forward with statements about how Ernest had worried about my marriage. How he'd told them he didn't trust Raymond. How he'd set up the trust specifically because he feared I might need it someday. "Your daddy saw through Raymond from the beginning," said Leon Fletcher, who'd worked alongside Daddy for 40 years. We sat in my living room while Patricia recorded his statement. "Ernest told me once, 'Leon, that man married my daughter for the wrong reasons. I can't prove it, but I know it in my gut. I'm going to make sure Dorothy's protected.'" "When was this?" Patricia asked. "About a year into their marriage. 1988, maybe 89. Raymond came into the garage one day asking about that land on Riverside Road. Wanted to know if Ernest had ever had it surveyed, if anyone had made offers on it. Ernest didn't like those questions. He told me later that night that something wasn't right." The pieces were falling into place. Raymond had been planning this for 37 years. On Wednesday, 3 days before the emergency hearing, I was at home grading essays. I'd picked up a part-time tutoring position because I needed to keep my mind busy, when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a young black woman in a business suit, holding a briefcase. "Mrs. Caldwell, my name is Jasmine Porter. I'm an executive with Apex Natural Gas Corporation. I know you deleted our message, but I really need to speak with you about the Riverside Road property." Against my better judgment, I opened the door. "I'm not interested in selling." "I'm not here to pressure you," Jasmine said quickly. "Actually, I'm here to warn you. May I come in, just for 5 minutes?" Something about her earnest expression made me step aside. We sat in my living room, and she pulled out a folder. "Mrs. Caldwell, I did the original geological survey of your land back in 2018 when I was a junior geologist. I reported to my supervisor that the natural gas deposit was worth approximately $32 million. But there's something the survey didn't include in the official report." She pulled out additional documents covered in technical drawings and numbers that meant nothing to me. "There's a second deposit," Jasmine said quietly. "Deeper down. We found indicators of it but couldn't confirm without more invasive testing, which we couldn't do without the property owner's permission. But based on the data we did collect, that second deposit could be worth another $40 million. I stared at her. $40 million? I couldn't include it in the official report because it wasn't confirmed. But Mrs. Caldwell, your land is sitting on approximately $72 million in natural gas deposits, and there are people who know this. Does Raymond know? I don't think so, but someone does. Someone who's been making inquiries about buying the land. Someone who's offering to pay your ex-husband's legal fees if he can get the property away from you in court. My blood turned to ice. Who? A man named Marcus Jennings. He's the vice president of our competitor, Continental Gas and Oil. He's the one who originally approached your father back in the 90s. When your father refused to sell, Jennings has been waiting and watching. Why are you telling me this? Jasmine met my eyes. Because your father was a good man. When he turned down our offer, he wrote a letter explaining that the land was for his daughter's future. That it was about legacy, not money. That letter made its way around our office. It stuck with me. When I heard about your divorce and the court case, I realized what was happening. Jennings is using your ex-husband as a pawn to get to your land. She handed me the folder. This is everything. The second survey data, the communications between Jennings and various parties trying to acquire your property, even some intercepted emails that our legal department obtained through proper channels. Give this to your lawyer. Why would your company help me? Because Apex does business ethically. If we want your mineral rights, we'll make you a fair offer and you can accept or decline. We don't manipulate people, we don't commit fraud, and we don't like being played by competitors who do. She stood up. There's one more thing. The emergency motion your ex-husband filed, it was drafted by a lawyer paid for by Continental. Jennings is pulling the strings. After Jasmine left, I called Patricia immediately. She came over within the hour, and we spent the evening going through every document Jasmine had provided. This changes everything, Patricia said, her eyes gleaming. If we can prove that Raymond's emergency motion is being funded by a third party with a financial interest in your property, the judge will throw it out. This isn't just divorce fraud anymore, Dorothy. This is conspiracy. Can we prove it in 3 days? We're about to find out. Patricia worked around the clock. She deposed Jasmine Porter. She got court orders for Continental Gas and Oil's communications. She brought in a forensic accountant who traced money from Continental to the law firm representing Raymond. Friday night, the night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Daddy, about how he'd seen this coming somehow, about how he'd protected me from beyond the grave. I thought about the land that had been in our family for generations, about my great-grandfather who'd bought it when black folks weren't supposed to own anything. That land represented more than money. It represented survival, resistance, legacy, and Raymond had tried to take it like he had a right to it. At 2 a.m., I got up and made coffee. I was sitting at the kitchen table when I heard glass breaking in the living room. Before I could move, my back door crashed open and 2 men in masks rushed in. I screamed, but one of them was on me fast, his gloved hand over my mouth. "Where are the papers?" he hissed. "The survey documents. Where are they?" I struggled, but I was 72 years old and he was strong. The second man was ransacking my living room, tearing through Patricia's boxes of evidence. "Check upstairs," the first one ordered. That's when Sister Beverly came down the stairs like an avenging angel, my daddy's old baseball bat in her hands. She'd been staying with me, sleeping in the guest room. "Get your hands off her!" Beverly swung that bat, and the man holding me had to let go to dodge. She swung again, connecting with his shoulder, and he howled in pain. The second man rushed at Beverly, but she was ready. She'd been married to a Marine for 30 years before he passed, and she knew how to handle herself. The bat caught him in the ribs, and he went down. I grabbed my phone and called 911, for real this time. "You better run," Beverly said to the men, bat raised, "because the police are coming, and I'm just getting warmed up." They ran, crashing back out through the door they'd broken. Beverly immediately came to me, checking if I was hurt. "I'm okay," I said, shaking. "Beverly, you saved my life." "Baby, I told you I had your back," she said, but I could see her hands trembling too. "Nobody messes with my sister in Christ." The police came, took statements, dusted for fingerprints. Officer Webb was on duty again, and he looked grim as he examined the broken door. "Mrs. Caldwell, these men were professionals. This wasn't a random break-in. What were they looking for?" Patricia arrived before I could answer, her hair wrapped in a silk scarf, wearing sweatpants. She assessed the damage and immediately called someone. "We're moving the hearing up," she said after ending the call. "Emergency session at 8 a.m. Judge Morrison is already aware of the break-in. Dorothy, someone is very desperate to stop you from going to court tomorrow." "Today," I corrected, looking at the clock. It was 3:47 a.m. "Court is today." At 8 a.m., I walked into that courtroom with a bandage on my arm where I'd scraped it during the attack, with Sister Beverly beside me like a bodyguard, with Loretta and half of New Hope Baptist Church filing in behind me. Raymond was already there, looking confident. His lawyer was shuffling papers. And in the back row sat a white man in an expensive suit who I'd never seen before. He was watching the proceedings with intense interest. Judge Morrison took the bench, and her expression was thunderous. "I understand there was an incident at Mrs. Caldwell's home early this morning. Officer Webb, you're here to provide testimony?" "Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Caldwell's home was broken into by 2 masked men who demanded survey documents. They fled before we could apprehend them, but we're running DNA from blood left at the scene. One of them was injured during the altercation." The judge turned to Raymond. "Mr. Caldwell, did you have any knowledge of this break-in?" "No, Your Honor." Raymond looked genuinely shocked. Maybe he really didn't know. Maybe Jennings hadn't told him everything. "Ms. Green," the judge said, "I understand you have new evidence to present?" Patricia stood, and she was magnificent. "Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Caldwell's emergency motion was not filed in good faith." but rather as part of a conspiracy involving Continental Gas and Oil Corporation to fraudulently obtain my client's property. She laid it all out. The documents from Jasmine Porter. The forensic accounting showing money from Continental to Raymond's legal team. The communications proving that Marcus Jennings had been manipulating the situation from the beginning. Furthermore, Your Honor, we believe the break-in at Mrs. Caldwell's home this morning was an attempt to steal evidence that would expose this conspiracy. We're requesting that the court not only deny Mr. Caldwell's emergency motion but also order a full criminal investigation into Continental Gas and Oil's actions. Raymond's lawyer stood up, face pale. Your Honor, we had no knowledge of any third-party involvement. If what Ms. Green is saying is true, my client is as much a victim. Your client, Judge Morrison interrupted, her voice sharp as glass, has been committing fraud against his wife for 37 years. I find it hard to believe he's a victim of anything except his own greed. She looked at the man in the expensive suit in the back row. Bailiff, I want that man's identification. If he's who I think he is, we're going to have a very interesting conversation. The man stood up and tried to leave, but the bailiff was already blocking the door. Within minutes, we confirmed it was Marcus Jennings from Continental Gas and Oil. Judge Morrison's eyes could have cut steel. Mr. Jennings, you're going to sit right back down. I'm holding you in contempt of court until we sort out your involvement in this mess. Bailiff, make sure he doesn't go anywhere. She turned back to us. Mr. Green, your motion is granted. Mr. Caldwell's emergency petition is denied. Furthermore, I'm issuing a protective order preventing any party from contacting Mrs. Caldwell about the Riverside Road property for the next 6 months. I'm also referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. She banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. Mrs. Caldwell, you have my apologies that you've had to endure all of this. Outside the courthouse, Patricia hugged me tight. It's over, Dorothy. It's really over. But as we walked to the parking lot, I saw Raymond standing by his car, and he wasn't alone. There were 3 men with him, and they looked angry. One of them stepped forward, and I recognized him from a photo Jasmine had shown me, one of Marcus Jennings's associates. Mrs. Caldwell, he said, his voice low and threatening, you're making a big mistake. That land should belong to people who know what to do with it. Sister Beverly stepped between us, but the man just laughed. You think you've won? This isn't over. Not by a long shot. Then he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there with my heart racing and a terrible feeling that the worst was still to come. I didn't sleep that night. Sister Beverly insisted on staying with me again, and Loretta came over with Thomas. They wanted to call the police about the threat, but what would I say? A man told me this isn't over outside a courthouse? That wasn't a crime, just a promise of trouble to come. Dorothy, you need to consider selling that land, Thomas said gently. He was a retired police officer, and the worry in his eyes scared me more than the threat had. These people don't play fair. You've already been broken into once. What if next time Beverly isn't there? What if next time they don't just want papers? Thomas is right, Loretta added. $72 million is life-changing money, baby. Take it and be done with this mess. But I kept thinking about Daddy's letter. Don't let nobody take what's yours. And I thought about my great-grandfather, buying that land when the world told him he had no right to own anything. I thought about generations of Robinson family who'd held on to that property through Jim Crow, through the Depression, through everything. I'm not selling, I said quietly. Not to Continental Gas, not to anybody. This is about more than money now. The next morning, Sunday, Pastor Williams devoted his entire sermon to standing firm in the face of opposition. Daniel didn't bow to the king's statue, he preached, because some things are worth standing for even when the fire's hot and the lions are hungry. After service, he called a special meeting in the fellowship hall. 50 church members stayed behind, and Pastor Williams laid out everything: the threats, the break-in, the conspiracy. Sister Dorothy needs us, he said. She needs protection, she needs witnesses, and she needs to know her church family has her back. I'm asking for volunteers to organize a watch schedule to make sure she's never alone, to be ready to testify if this goes to trial." Every single person raised their hand. Deacon Morris stood up. "I got security cameras from my grandson's electronics store. We're installing them at Sister Dorothy's house today. Front door, back door, driveway, everything." "I'm retired military," said Brother James, a quiet man who usually sat in the back. "I'll coordinate the watch schedule. Nobody's getting to Sister Dorothy on my watch." Sister Beverly hugged me tight. "See, baby? You're not alone in this fight." Monday morning, Patricia called with news. "The district attorney is moving fast. They executed search warrants at Continental Gas and Oil's offices this morning. They found emails between Marcus Jennings and Raymond discussing the land, the divorce, everything. It's all the evidence they need for criminal charges." "Against Raymond?" "Against both of them. Fraud, conspiracy, possibly attempted extortion. Dorothy, Raymond could be looking at serious prison time." Part of me felt vindicated, but another part, the part that had loved him once, that had believed in our marriage, just felt sad. 37 years, and it had all been a lie. "There's more," Patricia continued. "Jasmine Porter called me. Apex Natural Gas wants to make you an offer for the mineral rights. Not to buy the land, just to lease the rights to extract the gas. They're offering you $70 million spread over 20 years, plus royalties on everything they extract." My head spun. $70 million? "It's a fair offer, Dorothy. You'd keep the land, keep ownership, but they'd have the rights to extract the gas. You'd get annual payments plus a percentage of profits. By the time it's all done, you could be looking at over $100 million. $100 million. I couldn't even conceptualize that much money. "I need to think about it," I said. "Take your time. But Dorothy, they're offering you security, financial freedom, the ability to never worry again." That night, I sat in Daddy's recliner and thought about what I'd do with that kind of money. I could retire completely, travel the world, buy a beach house. But those dreams felt empty somehow. What would Daddy do? Then I knew. Tuesday morning, I called Patricia back. "I'll accept Apex's offer, but I have conditions." "What kind of conditions?" "I want to establish a foundation, the Ernest Robinson Educational Foundation. I want to fund scholarships for Black students going into STEM fields, trade schools, teaching programs, whatever they need to build futures. I want to buy that garage where Daddy worked and turn it into a community center with job training programs. And I want to make sure Lincoln High School's library is fully funded for the next 20 years. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then I heard her voice crack with emotion. "Dorothy, that's beautiful. Let me draft the paperwork." "One more thing," I added. "I want to give New Hope Baptist a $1 million endowment. Pastor Williams has been talking about renovating the Community Outreach Center for years. Let's make it happen." "Your father would be so proud." We finalized the deal with Apex on Wednesday. Jasmine Porter came to Patricia's office personally to oversee the signing. As I signed my name to papers that would change my life forever, she smiled at me. "Your father turned down $50,000 for this land because he knew it was worth more," she said. "Not just in money, but in what it represented." "You're honoring that legacy, Mrs. Caldwell." "Call me Dorothy," I said, "and thank you for warning me. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," she said simply. "Doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always necessary." Thursday morning, I woke up to pounding on my door. Brother James, who was on watch duty, was already at the door with his phone ready to call 911. Through the security camera screen, I could see police cars in my driveway. But this time, Officer Webb was smiling when I opened the door. "Mrs. Caldwell, I thought you'd want to know. We arrested the 2 men who broke into your house. DNA from the blood Sister Beverly drew with that baseball bat matched a known associate of Continental Gas and Oil. They're both in custody, and they're talking." gave up Marcus Jennings and Raymond Caldwell in exchange for reduced charges. Raymond, too? He knew about the break-in, ma'am. He gave them your security code for the back door. That makes him an accessory. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I just felt tired. When will they go to trial? Couple months, probably. District attorney wants to make an example of this case. Corporate fraud, conspiracy, home invasion. This is going to be big news. After he left, I sat down heavily on my couch. Brother James made me tea and sat with me quietly, not pushing me to talk. Finally, I said, I loved him once. Really loved him. How did I not see what he was? People who want to deceive you will study you, Brother James said gently. They'll learn what you want to hear, what you want to believe, and they'll give it to you. That's not your fault, Sister Dorothy. That's on them. Friday afternoon, Patricia called with more news. Raymond's lawyer contacted me. He wants to make a deal. What kind of deal? He'll plead guilty to all charges, testify against Marcus Jennings and Continental Gas, and give up any future claims to your property or assets. In exchange, he wants the prosecution to recommend a lighter sentence. What does the DA say? They're considering it. With Raymond's testimony, they can take down the whole Continental Gas conspiracy, but they want to know how you feel about it. I thought about revenge, about watching Raymond go to prison for decades, about making him suffer the way he'd made me suffer. Then I thought about Daddy's letter, about building something positive instead of dwelling in bitterness. Tell them I don't object to the deal, I said. I don't want revenge, Patricia. I just want this to be over. Are you sure? I'm sure. Let Raymond testify. Let him help take down the people who were using him. Maybe somewhere in there, he'll find a shred of the man I thought I married. The trial of Marcus Jennings and Continental Gas and Oil began in November. I attended every day, sitting in the front row with Loretta, Sister Beverly, and Patricia. The courtroom was packed with reporters, legal observers, and members of New Hope Baptist who came to support me. Raymond took the stand on the third day. He looked older, thinner, diminished in his orange jumpsuit. When he was sworn in, his hand shook. The prosecutor walked him through everything. How Jennings had approached him 38 years ago with geological survey results, how they'd planned the marriage and the prenup, how Continental had funded his legal fees, how he'd given the security code for the break-in. Mr. Caldwell, the prosecutor asked, at any point during your 37-year marriage, did you love your wife? Raymond's eyes found mine across the courtroom. For a moment, I saw something genuine in his expression. Regret? Shame? I couldn't tell. I told myself I didn't, he said quietly. I told myself she was just a means to an end, that this was all business. But somewhere along the way, he stopped, swallowed hard. She was kind, patient. She believed in me even when I didn't deserve it, and I destroyed that. I destroyed everything good in my life for money I never even got. The prosecutor pressed on. Did you ever consider telling your wife the truth? Every day, Raymond said, and tears ran down his face. Every single day for 37 years. But I was in too deep. Jennings owned me. He paid off my gambling debts in the 90s, covered my affair in 2003, made my investment fraud disappear in 2010. Every time I thought about coming clean, he'd remind me that he could destroy me. So I stayed silent. And I lost the only real thing I ever had. I didn't feel vindicated hearing this. I just felt empty. Marcus Jennings was convicted on all counts: conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted extortion, accessory to breaking and entering. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $10 million in damages. Continental Gas and Oil was fined $50 million and barred from doing business in the state. Raymond was sentenced to 5 years, with the possibility of parole after 3. As they led him away, he looked at me one more time. "I'm sorry, Dorothy," he said. "For whatever it's worth." I nodded. That was all I could give him. December came, and with it came change. The Ernest Robinson Educational Foundation awarded its first scholarships, 20 students receiving full rides to college or trade schools. I was there at the ceremony, watching young black students cry with relief and joy as they realized their dreams were possible. Daddy's old garage reopened as the Robinson Community Center, offering job training, GED programs, and small business mentorship. Leon Fletcher, Daddy's old friend, cut the ribbon while I stood beside him, both of us crying. Lincoln High School's library was renovated and renamed the Dorothy Caldwell Reading Center. My former students came back for the dedication, some of them now teachers themselves, telling stories about how I'd changed their lives. New Hope Baptist broke ground on their new community outreach center, which would include a food bank, a health clinic, and meeting spaces for community organizing. And I bought a small house near the beach in South Carolina. Nothing fancy, just a place where I could sit on the porch, watch the waves, and finally breathe. On Christmas Eve, I drove out to Riverside Road for the first time since the trial. The land looked the same, scrubby brush and pine trees, nothing special to someone who didn't know what lay beneath. But I knew. I knew this land held my family's history, my great-grandfather's defiance, my father's love, and my future. Apex had started surveying for the extraction operation, but they'd promised to preserve most of the land, to protect the old trees Daddy had loved, to respect what this place meant. I stood there in the winter cold, and I could almost feel Daddy beside me. "I did it," I whispered. "I protected what was ours. I used it to build something good, just like you would have." The wind rustled through the pines, and I chose to believe it was his answer. January brought new beginnings. The first community center classes started, with 40 people enrolled in welding, HVAC repair, and computer programming. The scholarship recipients sent me thank you letters that made me cry every time I read them. And I started teaching again, not at a school, but at the library's adult literacy program. One night a week, helping adults learn to read, watching their faces light up as words finally made sense. "You don't have to do this," Loretta said one evening as she drove me to class. "You've got more money than God now. You could be relaxing." "Daddy didn't work his whole life so I could relax," I said. "He worked so I could make a difference. That's what I'm doing." One of my students was a woman named Grace, 65 years old, who'd hidden her illiteracy her entire life. When she read her first complete book, a simple chapter book, but still, she looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "I never thought I could do this," she said. "You always could," I told her. "You just needed someone to believe in you." Driving home that night, I realized that was what Daddy had given me. Not just money or land, but the absolute certainty that I was worth protecting, worth investing in, worth believing in. Raymond had spent 37 years trying to convince me I was less than I was, but Daddy had spent his whole life showing me the truth. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, I got an unexpected visitor. Raymond's lawyer called to say Raymond wanted to see me. He was at a minimum security facility 2 hours away, and he'd put me on his visitation list. I almost said no. What was left to say? But something made me go. Maybe closure. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the part of me that had loved him once needed to see who he really was. The visiting room was gray and depressing. Raymond came in wearing prison khakis, looking thin and older than his 73 years. We sat across from each other with a table between us, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. "Thank you for coming," he finally said. "I don't know why I did." "I've been in therapy," he said. "Court-ordered at first, but I kept going because I needed to understand how I became this person, how I could do what I did to you." "And what did you learn?" "That I was empty," he said simply. "My whole identity was built on money, status, what people thought of me. I never developed anything real inside. And when I met you, God, Dorothy, You were so real, so genuine. It terrified me, so I convinced